is they all get implanted. And this takes days. I think it's like 21 days or something of everybody getting implanted, which basically means they're sat in front of movie screens, and it's like a 3D picture with light and sound and all this stuff. And they think that what they're viewing is real, or they have memories of this as though it's all real, but it's not real. It's just a movie. It's just an implant. And they are implanted with religion, Jesus Christ, gods, angels, devils. They are planted to believe that any body that they get in the future is only going to live for a short period of time. Therefore, part of this implant is that sex becomes really important because you've only got this little tiny short span of life now, so you better reproduce, and you better make babies, and you better make a family, and you better, otherwise you're not going to have another body to get into to occupy after your current body dies. So this total obsession with sex was also implanted during this time, which is why everybody's so crazy about sex and religion and every other aspect of civilization that we now have was all implanted at this time. And that is why our society is the stupid, kicked in the hole, silly kind of warlike society that it is, according to L. Ron Hubbard. Okay. So everybody gets implanted. Now there's one other aspect to this. Okay. As if all of this isn't crazy enough. One of the side effects of being involved in what we'll call a heavily traumatic episode. I mean, this would be the most traumatic thing you could possibly imagine, right?
I should say so.
Not only having your body destroyed, but then being implanted as a spiritual entity. All of this against your will, all of this being forced on you, right? Now you're a certain percentage, a vast majority of all of these billions of Thetans who have been dragged to planet Earth and given the Xenu treatment can't deal with it. They just flip out. They just freak out. And they end up going into a near comatose state of existence. They just pass out. They just give up. And they cluster together. Now, this is a weird thing because, you have a spiritual entity that doesn't have a location or any mass or any wavelength, but Hubbard refers to it with these physical terms of clustering. They gather together. They clump. And they're mostly unconscious. So they clump around a Thetan who is conscious, who is aware, who is still maintaining some degree of sanity despite the completely insane things that have just happened to him. And they kind of glom onto him. And they just kind of follow him around after that. So when this somewhat alive and somewhat together Thetan, who's got all these glommed on Thetans clustered around him, when he ends up so that happens. Okay, all this clustering happens. So billions and billions of these Thetans don't totally survive this thing. They're not dead, but they're not really alive anymore. They're kind of comatose or unconscious, okay? So the big reveal when people get to OT level 3, where they find out about this whole crazy sordid mess, is that in order to undo it, you got to wake up all these half-dead comatose Thetans. You got to rehabilitate them because they're glommed onto you like leeches spiritually, okay? And there's some relationship they have with your body too, but it's not really clear what it is, and I'm not even going to try to explain it because it sounds so fucking stupid that I can't even make any sense out of it. Like Hubbard said, your body is kind of composed of these clustered Thetans, but it just falls apart immediately under any critical thinking, so I don't even want to talk about that. But what you're supposed to do when you find out about this whole Xenu story is, it's not just finding out about it that is the big reveal on OT3. That's the smallest part of it. You go, oh, that all happened. Okay. This is supposed to explain all the reasons why you have voices in your head and crazy thoughts and weird ideas all the time. It's because they're not your thoughts. They're the thoughts of these half comatose thetans that are stuck to you. You ever have those weird thoughts and you wonder, why did I think that?
Every day.
Yeah, right? This is Hubbard's explanation for it. This is one of the reasons people buy into this nonsense. It's because they go, every day I have all these weird thoughts. Well, guess what? According to Hubbard, it's not you. It's these, what he calls body thetans or BTs. And what you need to do is you need to go into every day from now on, after you do this OT3 thing and you learn about this, you go into a session with one of those e-meters, and you using the reactions on the e-meter, you telepathically contact each and every one of these body thetans that are glommed onto you, and there are millions of them. So this takes years, and this takes you through OT3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, all the way up to OT8. You're just handling body thetans, and you're telepathically contacting them, waking them up, rehabilitating them, and sending them on their way. And when you finally get done with that, and it takes years and years and years to do it, you are just yourself again. No more body thetans, no more glommed on spiritual leeches. You're just you. And that is step 0 at the top, at the top of all of Scientology's training and auditing and everything you pay all the money for. You get to this place where you're back to being you without all this baggage that you've been carrying around with you for quadrillions of years. And that's the big, huge secret at the bottom of Scientology.
There's so much to unpack there. The one question, and I think just for time, because we want to get to some questions in the live chat, we would definitely love to have you back on to go into some, because I've wrote down a whole page of questions here that I'm not going to get to ask you tonight. But the one question that I want to know, just from you personally, is what did your face do when you were learning that story? Like, and what was going through your mind when that was being told to you?
Well, I'm going to disappoint you because I didn't learn all of this when I was in Scientology. I learned it after I got out. When I was in Scientology,
I think that's good.
Yeah. Well, it is, because it was a bunch of bullshit I didn't have to buy into. I got to the level of clear, which is kind of halfway up that bridge to total freedom that they have. It's a chart. That's why I keep making these motions with my hand. I talk with my hands all the time. But there's levels that you attain, and you pay money for each of these levels. And I attained so many levels. I got to the level of clear, and then that was as far as I got. The OT levels are what you do after you go clear. So you go clear, and then you do some training, and then you do OT 1, 2, 3. 3 is where you find out about Xenu. 4 addresses drugs. 5 is more body thetans. 6 is learning how to do OT 7, and OT 7 takes years. And it's just years and years every single day of stripping body thetans off of you until you're finally done. I know people who have been 10 years on that level. And then finally you finish OT7, you get to OT8. So I never made it to those levels. So I learned about all of this after I left the church. I had been made aware of the fact that OT3 was a very special level that everybody had to get to almost from the first day I got into Scientology. And I was very, very intrigued by it. Everything I told you just now is totally confidential within the walls of Scientology. Not any person who does that level is ever going to tell you that story as long as they're Scientologists. They think it is so sacred, it's such a sacred truth, that if you find out about it before you're ready and you start processing it and thinking about it and really working it, you'll kill yourself, you'll die. So it's very sacred knowledge within Scientology. So no one, in all the years that I was in Scientology, no one ever breathed a word about Xenu. I never even heard the name Xenu. It was all ultra hush-hush confidential, and no one was going to break that secret. So all I knew about it in all the years that I was in Scientology was that it was this very sacred truth. It was this amazing spiritual experience. everybody who did it swore it was the most amazing thing that ever happened to them. And it involved some terrible catastrophe that happened in this sector of the universe 76 million years ago. That's all Hubbard would say about it. He wouldn't say anything else. And every single person who had done OT3 will tell you, you'll never imagine what it is. You'll never be able to imagine this. Well, they're right, but not for all the wrong reasons, right? So I sat for years wondering what this was all about. And it really, really, I hate mysteries, man. I was glommed onto this thing. I really wanted to know. So after I got out of the Sea Org and I started researching Scientology on the internet, I went down this 3-month rabbit hole of information. And I was just blown away by it. I had never watched South Park. I had never heard of Xenu. I never knew about any of this stuff. When I got to the end of that rabbit hole journey and I found out all about Hubbard's pathological lying, his failing out of college, the fact that he never saw a day of combat, he was a liar, Dianetics was a lie, all of it was a lie. Once I found out about that, I said, okay, you know what? All these OT levels are on the internet. They're on WikiLeaks. I'm downloading them. I'm going to fucking read these things. I'm going to finally find out what this mystery is all about. And I knew that this was the point of no return. Once I opened that file and I started reading that PDF, I knew I was never, ever going to be accepted back into Scientology. But I'd already realized it was all a bunch of crap. So I took that
And it
step.
didn't kill you, obviously.
The indoctrination was so intense that within 24 hours after I read this information, I felt my throat scratchy, and I actually wondered whether something was happening or not. And I laughed it off because I thought it was ridiculous. But that's how deep the indoctrination was. Even after I read everything and knew how bad it was. Anyway, so to answer your question, now that I've given it all this context, I think my face probably looked about as pissed off as you could possibly imagine my face looking, because I was so furious that I had dedicated 27 years of my life to this totally, wholly illogical piece of nonsense. And I'd hitched my wagon, I had hitched myself to it. This was what I was going for. And to find out that that's all it was, and it was such obvious bullshit, it was so obviously nonsense, I couldn't even believe it. I couldn't believe how stupid it was. So I was pretty pissed. That's kind of that was my reaction.
How did the church respond when all that came out on South Park, all the thing about Xenu? Nobody had really known anything about that, obviously. I mean, that to me was the first time I ever heard of that either. So how did the church actually respond to all that? Were they in massive damage control, or what were they doing? They must have been spinning out of control.
Well, no, they I mean, yes and no. They didn't make a big public stink about it. They tried very hard to obliterate Trey and Matt from the face of the earth.
Yeah,
they didn't succeed at that. They actually infiltrated Trey and Matt's company. I mean, they really went for it. They also had Chef quit the case because he was a Scientologist. He was forced to quit the show. And that's about all they really got away with. They tried to ruin Trey and Matt's life, but they didn't succeed. Trey and Matt are infinitely smarter than the Church of Scientology. So that kind of passed, and they just left it alone. They didn't really do a whole lot more with it, at least not internally. I never heard about South Park when I was in Scientology. And when that episode came out, I was a Scientologist. I was a Sea Org member. So I never knew much about it.
The two people you don't want to try to ruin is Trey and Matt from South Park. That will always, I think, backfire on you.
Yeah, always. You won't win.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get
to
we're going to get to some questions from the audience. And guys, we've been monitoring the questions you got coming in. We are not going to be able to get to all of those. There's just way too many. So I think Steve's picked out quite a few. But like I said, Chris, we would love to have you back to go in deeper, because this is a fascinating topic and everybody's loving it. So go ahead, Steve.
Cool.
Whenever you're ready.
All right. Gage had asked, this is kind of a weird question, but I can kind of see why he's asking. He said, did you ever tell Scientologists in person to fuck off or something like that, and their action? Did you basically go back to them and just say, you know what, you're all full of shit. I don't know